everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of our weekly SBN News. I'm Kendra Byers, the Head of Community and Strategic Partnerships.
And I'm Scott Dalgleish, Head of Marketing here at SBN.
Scott, can you believe that it's been 4 weeks today since we rounded up the final day of Scottish International Week?
4 weeks seems like such a long time for something that feels like it happened yesterday.
I know, to think that we were doing our SIW news, which is now rebranded, with our chair Russell Dalgleish and our CEO Christine Essen, and we were doing a toast to it all being finished. But what an incredible week it was, and it's a delight to still see people like signing up, registering, consuming the replays and engaging with our speakers still to this day. So I encourage you to still go on the site scottishinternationalweek.com and check out those amazing replays, because there's lots of insights shared from our international speakers. So Scott, what else have we been up to this week and what's been in the news?
Yeah, there's been a few things happening actually. We announced our next event, which is going to be an evening with Scotland Is, where we will hear all about their role at the heart of Scotland's digital economy. Members can feel free to RSVP for that in the members portal or drop us a note to learn more. Andrew Morrison is also back, being as busy as ever, helping us out. He's going to be doing a masterclass on how to bid and win as part of our Insight series with Scotland House, also on the 17th of November. But also yesterday, at 12 noon, he reignited his LinkedIn Live session, where he sat down with SBN Ambassador Fraser Morrison out in Singapore. So if you connect with Andrew on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see all his LinkedIn Live sessions and catch the replays. We've also seen some members feature in the news over the last week. Lance Gold and Cloud Cover IT were in the Glasgow Herald as they discussed their ambitions for growth and some exciting opportunities coming up to join their team. Graeme McWilliam of Glencraft did a really nice piece in the Scotsman all about how dignity is going to have such an importance in the recovery process from the COVID crisis. Fraser Morrison, who was on LinkedIn Live yesterday, has got a brand new he's got a brand new series of events all about how to grow your brand and your network on LinkedIn. I'm currently doing a course with Fraser on something separate, and he's a really good hands-on coach and teacher, so I would highly recommend that. And finally, we had David Sutherland. He shared a small piece based on our event 2 weeks ago about how the University of the Highlands and Islands is a game changer for the future of the Highlands. So yeah, it's been exciting as always.
And it's a little different for our news this week. We have a special report from our ambassador, Ian Houston, in Washington D.C. to hear his thoughts as we approach the US election. But firstly, before we run into that, Scott, do you want to welcome today's first guest?
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome a familiar face from those who saw him at Scottish International Week, James Napier.
Scott, good morning, Kendra. Thank you very much for the invite.
Hi there, James. It's great to have you on. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you both?
We're doing great. Just before we started, I wanted to ask if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and the CBN network.
Okay. So yes, obviously James Napier, founder of Carbon Expert. We help mainly SME businesses to fully embrace tackling climate change. So we work with a range of businesses across all sectors and really make it easy and simple for them to commit to and start their journey. And then through a series of support networks, the communities, which we're going to talk about now, we keep working with them all the way through to them achieving net zero. So it's exciting times, and we're seeing a lot of businesses commit to wanting to reduce emissions from their businesses.
Yeah, and it's something that we're passionate about as well, which leads me on to my next question, and that's about NeZero Scotland, which people will be learning a lot more about over the next week as we launch. But it's not something that's just come about offhand. It's an idea that you've had for a while. Can you tell me a little bit about why you came up with this idea in the first place?
Yeah, well, firstly, it's really exciting to have the opportunity to put together a community that's dedicated to Scotland. So thank you for the opportunity for that. And really, it builds on the leadership that Scotland's already shown in environmental activities. So all of the renewable power that Scotland has, and very much its hosting of COP21, and a large part of what's being asked in the race to zero is for companies, regions, cities to make a real commitment to be net zero and then show some progress ahead of the meeting next November. So the community that we're launching it's no coincidence, it's launching pretty much exactly a year before COP26 happens. And we're looking to show and support Scotland in continuing to take a leadership position in being committed to and delivering action against lowering emissions and tackling climate change.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the launch next year is going to be 1 year out from the big COP26 in Glasgow. What can people and businesses in Scotland expect from the NeZero Scotland community?
So I think it's very simply, it's a community that supports businesses across all sectors in Scotland. We're allowing them to make a pledge to net zero. It's now a legally binding commitment to be net zero by 2050. So we're really allowing companies to get involved, giving them insights and information on why it's important, how they can measure their carbon footprint, how they can take actions. And then we give them access to experts, and again, the whole economy can start making significant progress to being net zero. Do that. So, we're very excited about trying to create what would be the biggest network of its kind in the world.
Yeah, and I've been working with you on that for the last couple of weeks and getting everything ready. And one of the things that I wasn't really expecting is the sort of wealth of content you already have. I can imagine it being quite daunting for an SME going to the first stage and saying, I want to become net zero in my business. How do I do this? And being hit with a wall of reports and UN legislation and advice from the EU. So what sort of content do you think will be to help SMEs will be able to find on the community?
So the first thing that we provide is knowing where you're starting from. It's impossible to plan a journey. So knowing exactly what the total emissions are, where they sit in terms of energy, transport, what some of the intensity metrics, so how many emissions are you producing per employee that you have in your business, all of that is the first starting point, the first step on your journey. Once you've done that, then it's quite easy to look at areas that you can start taking action against. So if you're not buying green energy is a good place to start. If you've still got petrol or diesel cars and you're looking for it. So once you've got that visibility, it's less daunting. Once you start taking a couple of steps, you make progress, it builds confidence. And we're seeing a lot of companies then say, actually, I'm now comfortable with this, I'm now more experienced, I want to do more. It is that real journey, but measuring, knowing where you're starting from and taking the first step is the most important thing. And that's what the community is designed to support.
It certainly is. James, I just want to thank you very much for your time, and we'll be hearing a lot more from you over the next coming weeks, because I know we're going to be working really hard on getting the word out about the NeZero Scotland community. It's not just for SBN members, since it's such an important issue, and as James mentioned, legally binding with an end date. It's something that we want the entire business community in Scotland to get involved with. But I just want to say thank you very much for your time just now, James.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. I look forward to saying more about the community in due course. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, James. So yeah, as just a reminder there, next week on Monday we'll be officially launching the NeZero Scotland community. You'll be able to find all the details online, and we'll be sending details out in the press and all across our social channels. So Kendra, before we move on to our next guest, we just want to cut away slightly. Yesterday we sat down with Ian Houston, our ambassador out in Washington D.C, to talk all about the upcoming election in the US, what that means for Scotland, and also how the UK and US trade negotiations have been continuing.
Great to have you join us, Ian. With less than a week from the US election, what is the atmosphere like in Washington, D.C?
The reality is there is real tension that exists, anxiety amongst the electorate. And there is a real desire, I think, from individual Americans to move on, to get to a point where we can actually pull down the barriers that exist between us and move forward to actually solve problems together. And so I hope that what will happen is that once we have resolution with the election, we can move forward into an atmosphere that's more conducive to partnership and working with one another. But right now it's a very difficult, historically divided time, and that's not unusual for elections, but this is a particularly difficult time if we add in all the elements of the tension that exist with the pandemic and the economic challenges that exist. And so it's a challenging time for Americans, and I think Americans just want to move forward. So hopefully that will be the case. Once we have resolution, we can collectively move forward across party lines to really work on solving these problems together.
We also wanted to ask you about the discussion over the trade deal between the US and the UK. How are these advancing, and what do you think this will all mean for Scotland?
The US-UK trade negotiation is in its 5th round, so it's actually moved quite far in the overall process. And both sides are very encouraging. There are hundreds of people, Foreign Service, Civil Service, individuals who have been involved in this process. It's going to be really difficult to have an agreement in place prior to the end of the year. Congress would need to approve the trade agreement, and it simply will not be in session to do that. And so the question is whether or not, if there is a new administration, what will a Biden administration want to do with the trade negotiation with the UK? I think it is in the interest of the United States to have a favorable agreement with the UK as it relates to trade. Trading will occur and trading will happen outside of formal trade agreements, but I think it's very likely that there is a Biden administration. That administration would want to continue the negotiations because the UK has certainly said that it wishes to have those negotiations continue. For Scotland specifically, as I have said often, that it's critically important for the voice of Scotland to be heard in the context of these negotiations. That's been a little dicey. It hasn't been as good as it should be. There have been efforts in the UK to include the Scottish voice, but literally Scotland, of course, and the devolved nations aren't at the table. And so it's really critically important for industry leaders, enterprise leaders in Scotland to have an opportunity to talk about the Scottish economy, what makes it unique, to talk about the growth sectors that exist in the Scottish economy, where investments are occurring. And I think within the context of a negotiation, again, it's so essential for U.S. negotiators and U.S. decision makers to see what makes Scotland unique and remarkable when it comes to entrepreneurship and being an incubator of innovation and creativity. And so if that can emerge in the context of these negotiations, that's great. But there are definitely some tariffs that need to be addressed that have impacted Scottish communities and have impacted the livelihoods of Scots when it comes to issues like whiskey and biscuits, etc. And those are very important issues to the Scottish economy and need to be resolved, perhaps even outside of this trade negotiation.
What would happen with the trade negotiations if Trump were to be re-elected?
If President Trump is elected when it comes to the negotiation, I think there is a real likelihood that there would be an agreement at a more accelerated pace. So we would see an agreement within the administration quite quickly. As to whether or not Congress would approve it immediately, that's the question. But no doubt, no question in my mind that there would be some sort of agreement for sure in the not too distant future, in the next few months for sure, with a Trump administration being re-elected. Again though, a new Congress would need to determine whether or not it approves that agreement, and that would take some time for discussion and dialogue, and then final approval by the Congress.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Ian. I know how busy you must be out in Washington. For everybody watching, you can hear more from Ian in his article in the Herald called Letter from America. There's a brand new one coming out in the next couple of days. So thank you, Ian. And now we go back to our main show. So, Kendra, who's our next guest?
Well, we're delighted to be welcoming Sylvia Baldock.
Hi, Kendra.
Hello, Sylvia. How are you?
I'm so well. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. So, Sylvia, you have a passion for empowering people and aiding them to tap into their hidden potential and become more significant. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do with senior leaders and teams?
Absolutely. And, you know, this has never been a better time to be doing this sort of work because so many people are really uncertain of their future. And of course, we've never had as much time as we have right now to kind of step back, take stock and think, is this all there is? And a lot of people who've been in roles for a long time are thinking just that and thinking there must be more. And I think, you know, in these unprecedented times when we're faced with our mortality, it does actually stop you and make you think about the future. So I'm working a lot with senior leaders and teams who are re-evaluating where they are right now and where they want to spend the rest of their life going forward. And the program I run with them is about helping them to reconnect with what their unique value is and to look at how they can use that unique value more to actually live their legacy right now, rather than work their whole life and then at their memorial service hear about all the great stuff they did. It's actually be visible for who they are right now and the unique value they've got to offer.
Thank you, Sylvia. I think we've temporarily lost Kendra, so I'll nip in. How has your life changed over the last 6 months and how you deliver this sort of training and impact these different people and businesses?
Oh, phenomenally, Scott. I've actually really embraced lockdown, and I know it's been unbelievably difficult for people, but as soon as we went into lockdown, I thought, right, what do my clients need? And a lot of the clients I was working with were really worried about their people working from home, being demotivated, getting depressed, etc. So I immediately pulled together quite a practical webinar on how to work effectively from home and how not just to survive this time, but how to thrive through it. And that went down incredibly well. I must have delivered it between 16 and 20 times. And it brought up global opportunities for me. So having this wonderful platform has enabled me to reach people that I would never have reached prior to lockdown. And that's brought in new opportunities, new clients, and also it spurred me on to launch the online version of Becoming More Significant, which I wasn't going to launch till end of this year or beginning of 2021. And I'm currently running my 7th group, taking my 7th group through that program. So it's opened up a lot of opportunities for me and it's been fabulous.
Yeah, so you mentioned this has sort of reached a more global audience and given you that opportunity. So have you got any exciting projects upcoming that people can become involved with?
Well, actually, my next program is starting on the 17th of November, and it's a 6-week intensive program. There's a weekly masterclass. It starts with an in-depth profile, which highlights your natural strengths, your natural challenges, your communication style, your ideal roles. And once you understand that, then you can start to craft your life and think about what you want to get involved in that's going to utilize those skills. And then each week, the masterclass builds on the previous one, taking people through personal branding, their personal impact, their vision, their values, their goals, continued evolution and growth, and how they stand out and be seen for all the right reasons. So it's, as I say, very in depth and incredibly transformational. So the feedback's been awesome. So that's the 17th of November that starts.
Perfect. And we'll put all the descriptions and the links of that below the video and in all the posts. So one thing I did want to ask as well, Sylvia, is that we'll have a lot of people, especially here in the UK, who will be fully integrated back into work now because of the furlough scheme ending, and they might not be so familiar with working from home or used to it, or using Zoom so much and video to interact with their teams. If you could give some piece of advice for people who might be going out to try this and getting back into work again in this new environment, what might it be?
It might be just reconnect with your own value, because when you're really sure of where you bring your natural skills to the workplace, whether it be at home or whether it be in the office, then you have this kind of core of resilience that helps you to cope with whatever life's going to throw at us. And none of us know what's coming next, Scott, let's face it. You know, every day the news gets more and more alarming, but if you can invest in yourself and become really strong in yourself, then you're much more able, as I said earlier, not to just survive this time, but to actually thrive through it and become stronger and to rise up through your career. This shouldn't stop you. This should enable you to rise through this, because as you know, we all learn from challenge much more than we learn from success.
Definitely. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on, Sylvia. For anybody interested in becoming more involved or seeing what Sylvia's up to, 17th of November, we'll put the details in, and of course you can find out everything on our website and connect with her on LinkedIn too. So Sylvia, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you now.
I'm back. Thank you for that, Sylvia. There was some difficulties in the studio, but thank you to my co-host Scott for picking that up. Scott, what have we got coming up?
Yeah, we've got a few things coming up that you should all keep your eye out for. Obviously, the launch of the NeZero Scotland Community on Monday next week. We'll be making a lot of noise about that, as well as our Ambassador Ian Houston's letter from America, which gets published in the Herald. As I mentioned before, our events are open for registration for members. It's the 17th of November. You can find all the details out in the members portal or drop us a note and we can share the details with you. And we also have some exciting partner news we're going to be sharing over the next few weeks. A lot of what we've been able to achieve has been through the help of our partners like STV, ScotWeek, the Africa Scottish Business Network, and we're going to be really highlighting that in the coming weeks. So thank you very much.
Thanks again to today's guests. Our SBN News is a weekly feature, so if you are a member and you would like to join us, get in touch with either myself or Scott. I'm not going to say too much about next week, but there will be mention of whiskey and chocolate. Thank you, everyone, and see you again next week.
See you next week. Thank you.
Bye.